All right, guys. Thank you so much for those of you who just hopped on. I mentioned earlier, for those of you just now coming in, if you want to drop in the chat if you're college compost, we'd love to celebrate that with you and celebrate all the colleges across the country who are composting. This is a webinar, so everyone is on mute and your videos are off for now. During our Q&A at the end, you'll have a chance to unmute yourself and ask the panelist or the group any questions you may have. But please definitely don't hesitate on dropping questions that come up throughout the webinar in the chat, which can be found at the top of your screen. And some Better Earth team members will be on the call and can help answer those as we go along. Panelists, feel free to answer any questions that you may see popping up in the chat as well, if you have the time. For those of you who are new to our quarterly compost conversation webinars, welcome. Better Earth is a sustainable packaging provider located in Atlanta, Georgia, and our mission is to make sustainability accessible. We help businesses, including colleges and universities across the country, reach their sustainability goals with compostable packaging. So we host these quarterly compost conversation webinars with composters and different industry leaders. So you can find previous webinars on Better Earth's YouTube channel, or you can sign up for our newsletter to stay up to date on future webinars like this one and other ways you can help advocate for the growth of composting. In today's webinar, we're going to be talking about sustainable food chains on college and university campuses with an emphasis on those colleges that compost. So we're going to be hearing from a college campus composter, sustainability and dining department faculty, and a zero waste team student, and how they are all closing the loop on their campus. So without further ado, I'm going to go ahead and let the panelists introduce themselves. Jordan, maybe we'll start with you if you want to share a little bit more about you and your school and maybe a couple sustainability initiatives that you're excited about right now on your campus.
Absolutely, I'd be happy to. So Jordan Barron, happy to be here from Georgia Tech. I've had the pleasure of working with Blair and the Better Earth team for a while now, so thank you again for the invitation to join y'all here today. Right now, I am working with Georgia Tech as the Campus Sustainability Project Manager for the Office of Campus Sustainability, and the timing could not be more perfect. We are actually in the process of kind of rolling out our Georgia Tech Sustainability Plan, and that is a product of Sustainability Next. So Sustainability Next started in 2021 with a very specific charge from the president, proposed a strategic plan for implementation of a roadmap for sustainability at Georgia Tech over the next 10 years. So no easy undertaking, but a very, very comprehensive and thoughtful process went into place for that. And Georgia Tech has committed to implementing this plan, and not only implementing, but allocating $1.25 million in which to do so. So we're excited. This year includes development of that climate action plan moving towards carbon neutrality. And throughout this entire process, of course, working across campus, making sure we're engaging with our constituents and our stakeholders involved, and further supporting the interconnectivity of multidisciplinary departments and programs across campus, especially in sustainability. We're so often siloed and looking to do whatever we can to bring those worlds together.
Thank you so much, Jordan. Always excited to hear about what you guys have going on campus. Maya, would you like to share a little bit more about yourself and your school and some things that you're excited about right now?
Hi, yes, I would love to. Hi, everyone. My name is Maya. I'm a student at UT Austin. I'm double majoring in environmental engineering and geography. So I am very passionate about sustainability within the academic realm, but I'm also the zero waste student manager at the UT Farm Stand. We are a student-run program housed under the University Housing and Dining Department of UT, and we really strive to grow local and healthy food and essentially make this type of food accessible to students. And furthermore, we also aim to demonstrate a sustainable food system on campus with our gardens team, which represents like production, our markets team, which represents distribution, and the zero waste team, which is the team that I'm on. And we deal a lot with disposal process as well as compost.
Thanks so much, Maya. I learned about UT Austin Farm Stand at NACUS, the College University Conference, and was just so impressed by everything that you guys are doing on your campus and even out in your community. Matthew, we'll jump over to you next. What you got going on over at Clemson?
Hey guys, I'm Matthew Sloop. I'm the composter and compost manager at Clemson University. We take on about 4 to 7,000 pounds of food waste every day. Last year we cleared, I believe it was 505 tons for the year of food waste to prevent it from going to landfill. So, any other questions and everything else, I will be able to cover later.
Awesome. Thank you. And then Lexi.
Hi, everyone. I am Lexi Moranska. I'm the Sustainability Director for Boston University Dining Services. We operate about 28 different dining locations across our campus in Boston, Massachusetts. We divert all of our food waste to either composting or anaerobic digestion, which is popular in urban areas like we are. We also have 7 certified green restaurants across our campus. We have a campus farmers market and CSA program in the summer and fall every year. We spend a lot of work on local and sustainable sourcing, but probably most significant to this webinar, we do a lot of work around reducing waste and promoting reusables and compostable disposables. Our university has a zero waste goal of being zero waste by 2030. So we have a lot of initiatives really tied to that goal so that we can be successful so the university can achieve it.
Awesome. Thank you so much. It's so exciting to hear what you guys have going on your different campuses, and just the impact that higher ed can make together through things like composting and sustainable food value chains on campus. So we'll go ahead and dive into the meat of our compost conversation, starting with our composter. So Matthew, before kind of diving into what it looks like, maybe at the dining hall or the campus, side of things, I kind of want to get an understanding for, the compost side of things. So could you tell us what needs to be taken into consideration from kind of a composter's perspective when hauling and processing those kind of larger college campus size, volumes of food waste and other compostables?
Absolutely. Some of the big ones that I was able to jot down a little bit earlier was what are your DHEC regulations going to say about your industrial compost for whatever state you're going to be in? What materials are you going to be receiving, i.e. food waste, paper towels, cardboard, yard waste, landscape waste? Will you be taking excessive amounts of grease? And if you are planning on doing that, how are you going to use that? Is it going to go toward composting? Is it going to go toward biofuels? The raw meat guidelines are very important for a state-by-state basis. The scale of growth after your pilot program, make sure you have more than enough room. 3 times the amount of what you think you need is what I would probably recommend, because I am out of room at my facility and it'll be a couple of years until we can move. And then some other things that people might not think of, like the equipment needs, the geometry of your truck beds to your compost bins, to make sure you can maximize the amount of bins that you're hauling so you can take as many trips or as few trips as possible. If you've dumped, 5,000 pounds of food and you need to go back for a couple more bins, you just don't want to. Try and see if you can maximize in that aspect. And then think about the system that you're going to use. Are you going to use windrows? Are you going to use static aeration pile? Are you going to use an in-vessel? Static aeration and in-vessel are going to be really quick, but you're going to run out of room fast. Windrows is going to take up a lot of room, but it can hold the most amount of material. However, you're giving up speed for that. In-vessel and static aeration are going to be pretty quick. Windrows, they take a minute. My full process takes about 6 to 8 weeks. And then I have to let it cure after that to make sure all the unnecessary bacteria is no longer in the compost. Everything else is really about scaling and revenue streaming. I think that's about it.
Awesome. Well, I know I already learned something just in that first question. You had mentioned a department in the beginning. I think you said DHEC. Or could you elaborate on that a little bit for those who aren't familiar with that department or that stakeholder that you might be working with?
That's just who's going to be controlling your regs in your state. I know it's DHEC for South Carolina. I don't know if it's another acronym for any other state. I don't believe it is. But you would want to go through them to see what your permitting allows, what you're allowed to take with that permitting, and then what are absolutely no-goes for the safety and possible pathogens that you could attain in your compost.
Awesome. Thanks for elaborating on that. And then so you've kind of shared what, it takes to be a successful composter for the college campus, programs. What do you wish, schools would, make sure that they think about before starting a composting program to make sure it's successful, for their composting partner?
Can be summed up in one word: contamination. Contamination, contamination, contamination. How are you going to remove those plasticwares? If you're doing something like paper towels from restrooms, feminine hygiene products, if you have one feminine hygiene product in 200 metric tons of compost, if a regulator comes by and sees that, can you guarantee that regulator that there's not another one? If not, all that compost has to be thrown out. So they take different types of contaminations at different degrees of severity. With an industrial scale like a windrow system, we can absolutely take grease, but grease is really messy. It's difficult to clean up. And why would I want to take grease when that grease could be used to make biofuels for some other use out of?
Definitely. And then I guess on the campus side at Clemson, what have you seen to be helpful with reducing that contamination, whether that be signage or sorting, or what are some things that Clemson has implemented to help reduce?
We have implemented signage, we've implemented training, and it's still an ongoing battle. You're always going to have it. I'm not really sure for me specifically this semester. Our contamination has probably increased 5 to 6 fold, and I can't tell you why. So we're going to have to go back through to retrain our cooks and cleaners in the kitchen, our cleaners in the dining hall or in the academic halls and in the residence halls. Contamination is an ever-going battle, and contamination can include things like raw meat. But it's an ever ongoing battle that I wish I had an easy answer for, because it's something I struggle with every day.
Definitely. And a common theme in these compost conversation webinars and why we have them to figure out how we can help collectively address some of these systemic issues. But thank you so much for sharing, from a composter's perspective. I'm sure we'll get a lot of questions in our Q&A for you, Matthew, but we'll go
Absolutely.
ahead and we'll jump over to Lexi and Jordan. So the both of you have experience in working in both sustainability and dining, that sustainable dining role. So would love, and both of your campuses are great examples of closed loop campuses where you compost your food scraps, your compostable packaging, and other compostables. So would love to hear from both of you, just some of your successes in launching closed loop cafeterias and some lessons learned for other schools that might be considering composting in their cafeterias. Lexi, if we want to start with you, that'd be great.
Sure, thank you. So in our traditional cafeterias or residential dining locations on campus, we manage all of the waste sorting for both pre-consumer and post-consumer waste and use reusable dishware. So it's really easy to maintain a clean food waste stream. We just have to educate our staff in the dish room and in the kitchens on what can be sorted where. So we have really great success with that and have been doing it for well over a decade. It becomes a little more complicated when we look at retail locations, especially where food may be available in different types of retail packaging, where guests are doing the waste sorting themselves and things like that. So one success that we have seen in our retail food hall is when students or other guests are placing their order on Grubhub, we're a Grubhub only location, we have nudges or prompts to ask people if they want or need different types of single-use items, whether that be a paper bag or disposable utensils, or we also provide the option of if they want their meal plated on a reusable dish, if they're going to eat in person, or if they want it in a to-go container. And this past semester, or this current semester actually, we increased the disposable surcharge that we include on those to-go orders to 75 cents. Which not only covers the cost of the compostable container we're using, but also has shown so far to be enough of a disincentive for students who are going to be eating in person to not select that. Last spring, we saw about 85% of people requested their order to go, and way fewer than 85% were actually weren't eating in the location. And then this semester with the increased charge, we've seen about 57% of people request their order for here. So that's really cut down on waste. If we can minimize the disposables that people are going to have and the possible risks of contamination, to only have food waste be something people have to worry about, I think that's been a really great success. And then I would also just say a lesson learned is really being agile with your system and being willing to transition, whether that is to change signage, to change product, to understand that maybe a product that previously was compostable maybe isn't anymore for a variety of reasons. So don't create a program that can't shift, and make sure that it's something that everyone on your team knows that what the current moment is might not be the moment 6 months from now, a year from now, or something like that.
Thanks, Lexi. That was super insightful. So Jordan, anything you'd like to add in terms of successes and lessons learned?
Yeah, absolutely. So I'll give a little bit of context to tech dining in particular. So I had the opportunity to work with the institution prior to them going self-op. So in 2021, we went officially and fully self-operated with our dining unit. So a long legacy of contracted food service there, and it was no easy undertaking, especially during a pandemic. But it really did kind of reinforce that idea of agility and flexibility. I think that is key throughout everything that we continue to experience. So, providing transparency, we did struggle, especially in year one, to while we want to hit the ground running with reusables, there were certain instances in which disposables were absolutely necessary. And then to actually identify and the volume needed, and Blair can absolutely speak to the support provided by her team, but to find the volume needed to support an institution of our size with consistency and without contamination, and to make the process accessible to our students was, again, no easy undertaking. So spent a little over 6 months kind of getting creative, working with procurement, seeing what we could do within state guidelines. I will say, depending on your individual institution, having a as in-depth as possible understanding of your specific procurement policies and some of those logistical barriers prior to starting these programs will really work in your favor. One of the things I'll also mention is while we did just start year 2 of self-op, we've seen kind of some themes across the board. So really defining the culture. We, in starting a program from scratch, we hired a lot of folks, and some of those positions are still being supported with temporary or part-time labor. So as you have folks in rotation, it's so important to not only have that really strong comprehensive training program in place for your day-to-day team members, your leadership team, your executive leadership team, but to really define that culture. So having multilingual signage back of house so everyone who comes in the door has access to that same information of how the process works, and making sure that as a team, whether it's in huddles or those monthly meetings, ensuring that culture of understanding not only what we're doing, but why we're doing it. So it becomes more than just, okay, we have to do this thing. It's okay, we have the opportunity to be a part of something bigger. Sometimes it's that scraping food. Absolutely. I've been there myself, but we're all here for this shared vision. And I think that's the other piece that I'd speak to is planning in advance wherever possible. So whether you're looking at the specific system that's in place, Georgia Tech in particular has 2 locations where we have post-consumer collections, but that post-consumer collection piece is actually handled by a separate team than Tech Dining's team. So Tech Dining is personally responsible for that back of house collection, while our student services and campus services building team, their custodial team actually provides that front of house collection service. So making sure, again, communication, thoughtful planning, and systems that are put in place prior to implementation have really worked in our advantage whenever we've been able to do so. And then that final piece is just kind of assume it's not going to go perfectly. Self-auditing is huge. So the more that you're able to have these built-in self-auditing measures, whether it's a formal audit system, or again, kind of going back of house every once in a while and just keeping an eye on that contamination level, documenting with photographs, and again, some of the specifics of when you saw it, what team it was, and working to put a system in place so that you can, ideally minimize, if not eliminate, that contamination wherever possible.
Thank you. And you led perfectly into the next question. Regarding stakeholders, right? So you kind of mentioned how you have one group back of house and then you have one group front of house. So there's a lot of different stakeholders within a college campus food chain, ranging from operators to, like you said earlier, the procurement department, the chain restaurant franchises that Lexi was mentioning, external farmers that you source from, and part-time, almost seasonal student workers that kind of rotate in and out. So can you elaborate on how you found it best to kind of move projects forwards and have these different departments working together to kind of increase that impact on campus?
Yeah, absolutely. I think one of the biggest pieces is just being really proactive in your communication style. I think in a lot of these spaces, you may have folks who are excited, immediate buy-in, they see the opportunity, and then that may not always be the case. So the ability to kind of meet folks where they are, have that conversation, but I think I mentioned earlier, Georgia Tech is rolling out our strategic plan for sustainability. So while we've had very specific goals in place, it's huge.
Oops, I think you might have muted yourself.
Thank you for the heads up. I think one of the big things is to be able to unite in a shared vision across campus. So with that, for us, the implementation of the Georgia Tech Sustainability Plan, we've had these goals and these metrics in place, but to have that finalized and formalized with transparency and visibility across campus helps everybody, whether they're in the meeting room or interested in learning more separately, to really see, again, what the impact of their action is and how we can work collectively to get there. I think another big piece is having someone dedicated to this specific area. So having a sustainability specialist, while I'm very excited to have moved over to the Office of Campus Sustainability, was equally excited to hear that they weren't going to be filling that position that I held previously. So having someone who specializes in that area, whether it's a director, a specialist, a coordinator, who can really play that hands-on role in guiding and shepherding some of those conversations, especially in those early stages of inception, of development, building out those systems, and again, ensuring so many different diverse stakeholders have a voice in the room, but also are unified in exactly why and how we're going to be going about what we're doing here on campus.
Definitely. And I think one of those really powerful tools to come together over that shared mission is impact reports from composters. Anytime that you're able to get those reports showing exactly how much you've diverted, it can get those people, even the ones in the back, scraping plates, really excited about the impact that they can have. So Lexi, would love to hear from your point of view on your campus, how you bring these different departments and stakeholders together, to really make an impact.
Yeah, I think I just want to say first, I'm having some technical issues. So if my computer just suddenly dies, I apologize. I will try to get back on. But I think I echo a lot of what's already been said. I think a shared goal is really important, and whether that is a shared goal across your entire campus or even just within your department, that you can use to vocalize with other external partners, and making sure everyone is engaged in a part of the program. I also think it's really beneficial to try to get buy-in with implementing programs that aren't going to add any extra time or are going to be cost savings or cost effective, at least to start. That way you get folks on board and understanding the benefit behind different programs. And then an ask down the line is a little bit easier because they've seen some of the benefits that a program has had and been successful with. So for instance, we are in the process of phasing out our cutlery from PLA to Birch. And we found a cutlery that was actually cheaper than what we had been purchasing. So it was a really easy conversation with our teams that we're going to switch to this. It's going to look different, but it's actually going to save you money and it's going to meet our sustainability needs. So I think that is really effective. And then I would also just say, that engaging students in the process as well, not only so that they can be aware of it. Students always have questions about transparency, but also so that they can be advocates for the program and initiatives once they are launched. I think if you can engage students and they can feel excited or proud or like they have a responsibility or an ownership in something, then they're more likely to talk about it positively with their friends and classmates and just raise awareness and get more people.
Definitely. And that leads right into our next question. We might have lost Lexi for a second, but Jordan, can you give some examples of how students are responding to all these sustainability initiatives on your campus?
Yeah, students are excited. They are very vocal. They are very engaged. It's been great to work, not only at Georgia Tech, but throughout the state, and to see that there is a growing and consistent voice and interest and activation in sustainability. So looking specifically at composting, when we went self-op, one of the first things we did was we hired a team of students that were our influencers. So while some of those influencers focus very specifically on kind of more day-to-day dining support, I got a number of those folks to very specifically, or that were very specifically focused in sustainability. So we were able to go into the dining halls, directly engage with students, kind of do pop-up events where we were actually at the bins and helping sort. In the past, I've done Weigh the Waste, which is always kind of fun, looking at the actual kind of food waste per plate. We've done that in a few different ways. And generally what I've seen is if there's an opportunity for students to get involved, I tend to go on the side of having a wait list more so than an issue getting people into the room. I think a lot of that is also how you set these programs up. So, if you're asking for students to commit 20 hours of voluntary time a week, that's not the most equitable ask. But if you structure the opportunities and then those asks, whether it's volunteer or a paid position, in a way that really supports the student experience, but allows them to be directly kind of hands-on and have some degree of ownership, whether that's I'm the Tuesday table at Britain, or getting behind the scenes and getting involved in the auditing process. There's a lot of ways that students can really have touch points throughout each step of the composting process. And then what we've seen is, sometimes even more effectively than social media or our website, is that organic word of mouth conversation that starts to build when we're able to peel back those curtains and say, we're not going to say the process is perfect, but we're dedicated, we're committed, and this is where we're going, and we'd love to have you join us. So providing that transparency and then letting folks, just talk about what they saw and what they experienced along the way tends to work in our favor in terms of sustainability and composting as a whole on campus. The other piece I'd say is making it very easy for students to know what goes where. So that's something that's still very much a work in process for us, especially with the new Campus Center online, but ensuring that anybody who comes into the space is able to immediately see, okay, I don't have to go to school to know exactly which bin this goes into, making it accessible and then easy to identify as well.
That brings up such a good point, not just creating a program that works for your campus, but for the guests, that are coming for their first time and who have maybe never been exposed to composting before. So I think you guys do a great job of that. Matthew, real quick to hop back to you, would be curious, do you guys have students come and visit your compost site? I think an audit's a great way to get them engaged on the kind of front end, the dining hall side, but on the compost side, do you have students that come to your campus facility?
Yeah, we probably do 18 to 20 tours a year, and then whenever I'm there, I always keep the gate open. So if anybody just wants to drive by and get educated on what we do at our facility, then I stop what I'm doing and start educating. We're education first.
I'm so excited to come visit and come see those black soldier fly larvae. So definitely will come by if that gate's open next time I'm over in your area.
They've already gone dormant for the season, sadly.
Okay, well,
They've already gone asleep.
I love visiting any compost facility and any operation and technologies. So, but may plan for next spring. But
Absolutely.
that, speaking of students, that leads us into our next panelist, Maya from UT Austin. And so, as I mentioned earlier, I had the chance to learn about UT Austin's farm stand at NACUS, so a conference that probably a lot of you all are familiar with, and was so impressed by all that UT Farm Stand Austin does on campus and in their community. So Maya, can you kind of just share, I know you touched on the committees a little bit earlier, but could you share a little bit more about UT Austin and all that you guys are doing?
Yes, I would love to. So at the UT Farm Stand, one main thing in terms of like how we separate our committees is we have 3 teams. We have the garden teams, and the gardens, we have 2 gardens on campus. We have around, I want to say 20 plus hydroponics towers in which plants are grown from seed and then they are popped in the towers once they are ready to be put in there, and they are maintained along with a pollinator garden. We have a chef herb garden that is being built right now, as well as a South Asia garden, which takes a lot of plants that are native to the South Asia region, and that is more of an educational garden as well. And also within the gardens, we have volunteer opportunities, so students who are not part of the UT Farm Stand team can come in, really get hands-on experience in gardening, learn more about sustainable gardening methods, and also just get to spend time with us as a team. I think we're all a pretty chatty bunch in terms of sustainability, so it's really nice to like create that community within UT Farm Stand. So that's the garden team. We also have a market team, so every other Wednesday, from 11 a.m. to 3 p.m., you'll see us at one of the main streets on the university campus. And actually, we have our second market of the semester tomorrow. And a lot of it is really promoting the use of like local and sustainable produce and food. We source all of our produce from within the state of Texas, and we also source honey from an Austin local honey store called Good Flow Honey. We source from Easy Tiger bread and pastries as well. And then we also sell some of the produce that we grow in the gardens as well. And we really, really want to emphasize that we are there to make sure that sustainability is accessible as possible to all students. We want to make sure even if you're living in a dorm or if you're living off campus, you still have the ability to like have access to this fresh produce. And also you have like the ability to learn more about sustainability as a whole, because we make sure that we have organizations on campus. We partner with all of our sustainability orgs as well, and they table with us during market days, as well as we put on our own educational material, be it a waste sorting game to tell y'all maybe what goes in the compost bin and what doesn't, or anything along that matter. But yeah, we also have a compost drop-off at our farmers markets, which I think has become my favorite part of markets, definitely seeing the popularity of that grow. I remember last market, I had a girl come over with like a big box, a cardboard box, and she just said, like, where do I drop the compost off? And I got really excited because it wasn't about to fit in the bin, so I had to go grab another bag. But it was really exciting to see that even students are getting very excited about composting, and it's not just something that our little group is excited about. And then lastly, the Zero Waste team. It's the team that I'm on. I'm the most excited about. But we spend a lot of time doing behind the scenes things. Right now, our biggest project is working on an educational compost garden. This is so that students can be more educated in different composting methods and also how they can incorporate composting into their daily life. So we have a total of 3 compost systems that we are in the process of constructing and then putting right outside in the area where one of our garden spaces is. And then from then on, we would be putting together workshops and different volunteer opportunities in which we can use food scraps from kitchens and actually use that so students can see how compost is made and also different ways in which they can get involved. But yeah, that's a overview of our 3 committees as part of the UT Farm Stand, and we also have a bunch of other student-led projects within that as well, believe it or not. But yeah, we're a very passionate group of students, I think, on the UT Austin campus who want to make sustainability something that everyone can be a part of.
Thanks. I'm curious about those 3 composting systems. Can you elaborate on those a little bit, what those may look like?
Yes. So right now we have, I want to say we purchased the SubPod composting system, and that is going to be installed sometime next week. We have it all put together. It's just sitting in our office. And we also have the green cone system, which we just assembled last week, and that also needs to be dug up and popped in the ground right there. And then we also got a tumbler as well. Just 3 different ways in which students can learn about composting. And then in addition to that, I did forget to mention, as part of our gardens, we have a 3-bin composting system in which we utilize a lot of gardening scraps from any time we have a work day and all of that. But that is also another part of our educational composting material.
Awesome. Thank you so much.
Yeah.
And so one of the other things that, really just impressed me when, learning more about UT Austin Farm Stand was like you were saying, the energy and the engagement, surrounding this program from, the campus and even the local community. It seemed like you guys are almost your own brand, like you have merch and everything. So, what ways can students kind of get their campus engaged and participating in sustainability programs like at the level of, UT Austin Farm Stand? What are some tools or ways that students can get other students excited?
Definitely. And I mean, that's also just very exciting to hear. And I take that as such a big compliment because I think one thing that we have been working on this past year is, creating a name for ourselves and making sure that we are as visible to our community as possible. And I think one way that we really push towards that is using our social media to our advantage. We made sure that we made space within our team to really emphasize putting out educational material as well as promotional material for every single event that we had. And we really just pushed it in people's faces and really just made sure that people knew, like, anytime we had a market, UT Farm Stand was going to be there, and anytime we had an educational event, UT Farm Stand was going to be there. And I honestly think it's just a testament to the entire team. We have been spending a lot of time carefully curating different social media graphics, as well as just using word of mouth. I think everyone on the team is very proud to be part of UT Farm Stand. And I know y'all were talking about this earlier, word of mouth, it really gets you a long way. Just talking about different composting programs, or also I saw this sign here. It sounds really interesting. Maybe I'll go check it out. I think we made a significant effort to be as visible as possible on campus. And also, I think another thing is, a lot of people are very interested in sustainability, and more than you might think. You just need to get them talking about it. I can't tell you the amount of people that we have been talking to either at markets or while we were tabling on campus, who will just come up and they just want to have a conversation with you about sustainability and how to be involved. Not necessarily about buying some merch or something, which we love. I will say I will definitely stop and talk to people who I see wearing a UT Farm Stand shirt or a UT Farm Stand sticker. But it's very nice to see how many people really do care about sustainability. you just need to get them talking. And I think that's the best way, is to create that space that people have the opportunity to talk about sustainability and learn more about it.
Thank you so much, Maya.
For sure.
And one last question that I've kind of been thinking about, for the whole group of panelists is just in the past couple years, if you think that, more and more people are aware of composting on campus or asking for composting on campus or engaging with the composting programs more on campus, are you guys seeing an incline, decline? Kind of what's the state or landscape of composting in the higher ed communities right now? And I know I threw that out there to the group, so feel free, anyone, to hop in.
I could take this first. I did want to say there has definitely, at least in the past 2 years that I've been a part of UT Farm Stand, I've seen a significant increase in interest in composting. And I think one key example of that is this past summer, UT Austin hosts summer orientation sessions for incoming freshmen. A lot of sustainability departments on campus came together to ensure the entire summer orientation program was as zero waste as possible. So this meant that all the lunch meals and dinner meals that students ate on campus would be composted at the end. And this required so much coordination and collaboration from the entire campus, because we had students monitoring bins and educating all incoming freshmen about where to sort your trash. And it was really neat to see how many people were engaged and excited about sorting their trash. And later on, I would run into them on campus and they would come up to me and tell me, like, I put my plastic water bottle in the recycling bin, I didn't put it in the landfill, or something like that. I've definitely seen a lot more interest and engagement in that side.
As far as our outreach goes, we have a really good foothold in the Tri-County area of that's near Clemson, and we're starting to outreach more into northeastern Georgia as well. I've noticed a lot of new customers coming from Georgia over. But as far as new customers, it's probably a pretty linear growth for us. As a matter of fact, if I were to be honest, we probably have too much material, just because the amount of food waste that we're picking up continues to increase, but our customer base scale is pretty linear in growth. But we are attempting to partner with some local organic farms in our area, and some mom and pop, kind of like Tractor Supply style areas and nurseries to get our product out there.
Not
I would say, go ahead, please.
All right. Not necessarily composting specific, because we don't compost on campus. We work with different haulers, but I will say in the 3.5 years I've been in my role, waste is overwhelmingly the thing students are asking most about, whether that's packaging waste or food waste. What are we doing to reduce waste? How's it being diverted? Are we donating extra food? All of those questions are really leading the sustainability conversation, at least at BU.
Yeah, and I'll echo that at Georgia Tech. One of the things we've noticed and are excited about is while we do, collection on campus, we do work with a third-party vendor to actually have that material composted. We are in the process of expanding not only in our dining halls, but also into some of our residential halls on campus. So if you already have compost collection pickup points, we're in the process of expanding that even further. But I'd say students, outside of the dining hall space, are really excited and very interested about the opportunity to not only, again, compost when they're with us, but when they're at home in their dorms. The other piece I've seen a significant uptick in is special event requests, and then conference meetings, anything in the staff and faculty space. I've noticed a significant increase in requests from that end, generally more in kind of the catering space, but also more interest and inquiries in entire office buildings as well. So across the board, whether it's faculty, staff, or students, we're definitely seeing that interest and vocal kind of asking, hey, can we please do this here? And if not now, when?
That's awesome. Thank you guys so much for sharing more about, how kind of the buzz around composting is maybe growing on your campus or within your community. And Matthew, I loved what you brought up, about how on-site composters have to also think about the finished product that they create, right? Does that go back into the campus, whether that be, for on-site gardens like at UT Farm Stand, or for landscaping, or does that go to support the local community and maybe some of those farmers that you maybe source food for your dining halls from. So really thinking about that whole closed loop, that whole sustainable food chain on a campus. So with that being said, we'll go ahead and open up the floor for Q&A for everyone on the call. We already have one question in the chat. How connected are the schools to the local gardening community? I know that a lot of you guys work to source locally, but could one or two of you kind of, speak to that? Maybe some of your sourcing practices or specific gardens you work with?
Yeah, so I can speak to that a bit. One of the beautiful things about Georgia Tech is while we don't have, the full of what it sounds like UT Farm Stand has going on, we do have a number of campus gardens across campus, one of which is in the process of actually being kind of revamped and expanded to support additional engagement, educational, and actually campus dining kind of production. So, I think one of the biggest things we're looking at is, making sure, hold on one second.
Oh, I think we lost her. Does somebody else want to hop in while we're waiting for Jordan to join back in?
Yeah, I can answer the as far as the bin goes. For us, we do have uniform bins that have uniform sorting stickers on them to help students and faculty understand what products can and can't go into our bins. And as far as the gardening goes, our product goes to anywhere on campus that requires it. That's free of charge. We also do any sort of experimentations that any horticultural student might have. That's also free of charge. We have a community garden, and then we also have we're trying to partner with other organic farms, and hopefully at some point the botanical gardens that's at Clemson as well.
Awesome. Thank you, Matthew. Jordan, I'll let you hop back in on your local sourcing.
I was going to say, let me know if it glitches at any point. It froze. So if you hear me now, I assume we're doing much better. So one of the things I'll mention is in working with Compost Now, it's been a great, kind of connecting point. We're able to source and partner with a number of local organizations that help us, if not directly, work kind of in aggregate. So Common Market's great for that. We also work with Royal Produce, who has a number of local farmers in our network. But it's been great to be able to kind of provide that transparency, not only in the impact reports, but taking those impact reports a step further and really being able to see down to the local garden itself. We're on the west side of Atlanta. There's a number of donation spots from that finished compost that are throughout our immediate area. So, again, while we are kind of in that year one setup with Tech Dining, as we expand and as we build out, making sure that we're really being intentional in who we're partnering with beyond our current kind of specification list, and then being able to really kind of share that story with the community of not only are we able to do this work, but we can see it, a 5-minute walk down the road for folks who, especially with where we are situated, we have the opportunity and I think a certain degree of obligation to make sure we are being very mindful of the work that we're doing and the opportunity for impact, especially with where we're located in Atlanta. So I think we have I know that we've laid out some plans to move more so in that direction, but so grateful for partners such as yourself and partners like Compost Now, who have really helped us as we were in these early stages to start off on the right foot.
Thanks so much, Jordan. And shout out to the Common Market as well. That's a great point. Those food distributors that source from local farms. That's another, great, more wholesale place to kind of start. So we have another question about signage. So Matthew touched on, universal signage across campus, which we always encourage. And then this other question that we have in the chat is, has anyone compared signage types to see which is the most effective? Icons, photos, actual 3D items. And so, yeah, I'll let maybe Lexi speak to that.
Yeah, we have tried a number of different approaches at BU. We first had static signs with pictures of particular items for what went in the different waste streams. We heard from students that they wanted something different, so we tried shadow boxes with actual physical items from the locations. That way we could swap them in and out as things changed or new products were added. Ultimately, option was deemed too confusing for students after we had it for a few years, because they felt like if they had something that wasn't one of the items in the shadow box, then they didn't know what to do with it. So we've actually transitioned back to static signage and focused more on general categories. And so hopefully that will help people identify if it's food, if it's a fiber container, for instance, or something else that can go in the food waste, or if it is like a plastic bottle of sorts or a can or glass to go in the recycling, things like that. And that I think has been helpful so far, but we've only had it for a little over a year. So who knows what feedback we'll hear, but it's definitely a challenge figuring out which option is best.
And I'll echo what Lexi mentioned. There was a few times we looked at doing a shadow box approach or something like that. And in the time frame we went to create it, our supply chain changed so frequently that that box would not have been possible without adding to the confusion. So while we haven't actually done it ourselves, we started that process and we're able to see, okay, we're confused at a certain point. How can we be more thoughtful and ensure, again, without going too generic, making sure enough information is accessible and those kind of key points and key things to look for are prevalent and easily viewable on those more static signage options.
Thanks so much. And we have some other packaging questions in the chat as well. So I think this leads right into that. We'll start with, how does to-go packaging fit into the zero waste plans? What kind of packaging is ideal?
I think reusable packaging is always the best option if you can have a really strong reusable program and ensure that the containers are getting reused at least the number of times that need to be to have a lower environmental impact than the disposables. We are in a process of figuring out how we can roll out a reusable to-go program to really complement the university's zero waste goals and all of that. But in the meantime, we're really leaning heavily on influencing people to not select to go if it's something that they don't actually need, so that we can at least minimize the footprint of the compostable disposables that we're using for the present.
Yeah, we actually just launched our reusable to-go program this semester in our residential dining hall. So we've had students asking for quite some time, did this briefly with Aramark, but are really excited to, again, kind of bring it back and at a much larger scale. We wanted to, again, ensure accessibility was prioritized. So for us, anybody who has a residential meal plan is automatically, they have access to the program, but we do want to make sure, again, everybody can join in if they want to, so you can voluntarily join if you want to as well. The only thing I'll mention with reusables, it's absolutely ideal, but it is a system. And Lexi, I think y'all are wise in figuring out kind of the best approach. We took some time to do so as well. And it is no easy undertaking from a logistics and system perspective. But once you're able to put that in place and, again, ensure that the units themselves are being used to the point that it's more sustainable than, say, a single-use disposable and compostable option, you really do have an opportunity to really cut back on your overall waste on campus.
As far for us, we use a PETA #1 plastic reusable container. We're also transitioning to get away from single-use disposable plastics in situations where, like, our cafeteria's dish pit might be down for some reason. We're trying to get to compostable single-use compostable ware and compostable plates as well. I think that'd be about it.
And that leads to a great point. We see reusables a lot in the residential kind of dining halls. What about in some of the other areas on campus? I know, Jordan, you mentioned earlier catering. Like Matthew said, those backup, emergency stocks. What are some other types of packaging that you see in maybe stadiums or different areas on campus?
So, I think it's kind of adjacent to what we're talking about here. But I'd say while across all of our different areas, supply chain was an issue, one of the things that we've noticed is in working with third-party partners. So, working with franchises, working with those, classic local names that you want to have on campus, there's not always a guarantee that their packaging or their approach or their commitment to sustainability is aligned with our values. So one of the things that we've looked at, not only having internal policies in terms of what products we use, and it again, we've seen the supply chain issues that are out there. So we do have kind of a priority 1, priority 2, priority 3 based on availability. But ensuring that when we're partnering with folks, we have sustainability language that's been vetted by the institution and actually incorporated into those contracts. So while we are kind of, again, new, our campus center's opening, we have some flexibility in those launch starting phases. There's a really clear understanding for every vendor that has signed up to work with Georgia Tech that this is not something we're doing for the sake of, advertising something we're not. We've got a genuine commitment, and you'll need to join us in that commitment to be a part of the process. So I'd advocate it and recommend wherever possible, working with folks who are kind of outside your specific networks and ensuring, if this is an option, depending on how you're structured, that you have that kind of accountability measure built into the contract. And at the very least, bring that conversation to the table when working with these individual franchise owners, managers, and directors of these larger organizations, so that you're aligned in that packaging process. Because at the end of the day, what's coming out of those spaces will directly impact a student's ability and comfortability to appropriately sort that waste at the end of the day.
Thanks so much, Jordan. We have another question. I think this one, mostly will go to Matthew, but definitely welcome anyone else's opinions. But if a campus does use a lot of compostable ware, for example, a very large dining hall that struggles with labor shortages in the dish room, can this large volume of compostables overwhelm a composting operation? Or maybe even add value as a carbon source. So Matthew, what are your thoughts from an operator's perspective on compostables?
So ultimately, it all depends on the type of system that you have running. We use a Winrose system is our main system that uses the most weight. It goes through the most mass of any of the other 3 or 4 systems that we have. As far as just like what you were saying, it's a carbon source. At the end of the day, what's your carbon? What's your nitrogen? If food waste is your nitrogen, then that compostable ware ultimately is just extra carbon. So that's less wood chips, less mulch, less whatever your carbon source is that you're having to use to be able to continue your compostability. And it's always safer to have more carbon than nitrogen, because if you have too much nitrogen, stuff gets real stinky really fast.
And at Clemson, is it, single stream? That's one of the beautiful things about compostables, right? You're not having to rinse and sort like with maybe recycling. It can just go straight into one bin and can even be a vehicle for capturing more of that food waste, that nitrogen material. But do you guys, it's just like single stream, you get it in one bin, or do you need to take your compostables maybe in bigger bins for that kind of larger volume? Can you walk us through a little bit more of the collection aspect of compostables?
Yeah, so almost all of ours is all done on back end. So the students will eat, they'll dispose of their dishware, whether that be reusable dishes or compostable dishes, depending on what they're doing that day. And then every morning I run and I collect bins from each dining location, each location that we have bins out at Clemson University. And then from there, it's just one bin that's a 23-gallon size right now. We're hoping to expand to a bigger size sooner. But with that does come at the cost of most likely higher contamination from, some forks and knives might get spilled in there, or the bane of my existence right now, the little 2 to 3 ounce ketchup containers or condiment containers. Those things are everywhere, and I have yet to figure out a good way other than continual training with the back end of how to fix that problem.
Thank you so much. All right, we have another question. I know we're at 3, so we'll probably wrap up on this question. But is there any interest in higher tech app-based reusable container services in addition to compostable disposables and reusable dishware? Evelyn shared high tech services include containers with RFID QR codes to track containers, or an incentives-based return system, digital rewards for returning containers, for example. Are you guys using that on your campus, or are you seeing that kind of trend, coming down the pipeline in higher ed?
Yeah, these are, sorry. These are actually the kinds of systems we are looking into right now in our analysis. Our reusable container program will really exclusively be for retail locations where there's a lot of contactless pickup and mobile ordering. So I think a tech approach really fits in with that. So we're currently vetting all the different options, but this is certainly something that excites us and I think is really a great area for the future, so that you're not necessarily relying on a physical token or something like that for a reusable program. I think it will make it easier for everyone.
So our to-go containers are actually already incentive-based. You purchase the to-go container. It's up to you whether you keep it throughout the school year, or you can come back with it, in your next free time that you have. Drop it in the container, where then it gets taken to by someone. This is a little bit out of my wheelhouse, but it gets taken by someone, gets cleaned, and then to be reused again. So you can either choose to keep it and reuse it, or turn it back in to get essentially your money back for it. So you're renting the to-go container.
And I will say, we've definitely looked into that. We wanted to kind of hit the ground running with this particular program. So again, another great reason to be very familiar with your institution's procurement practices. There are often thresholds and limits and things that need to go out to bid if they exceed a certain amount. So while we're definitely moving in that kind of tech-based direction, we need to make sure we've got a lot of beautiful old buildings across campus. So in terms of tech accessibility and the infrastructure in place to support those systems, that's kind of what we're looking into now. But we did go ahead and invest in that system in terms of the boxes that we purchased and then the units to receive them, in hopes that as we move forward, we can kind of move to a more structured, specifically working with the RFID kind of traceability of these units. We also, again, we're not doing it necessarily incentive-based right now, but we do have a structure to hopefully support the ongoing return of these units, but would definitely be looking to more, incentive or digital rewards, whatever it may be, open to things like that as we move forward and kind of assess the efficacy of the program so far. But yeah, financial limits initially for some of those larger pieces. It can be a longer term investment and bid process accordingly.
Thanks so much. Any other questions from our audience for the panelist, or maybe the group as a whole?
I actually have a question, a couple of them. Just with any of the other panelists here, how much weight are you guys composting? What systems do you use? And are they industrial or more home composting scales?
So we only work with different haulers for our food waste diversion. We divert, I believe, over 520 tons of food waste per year. And so it's very much industrial, either anaerobic digestion or very large scale windrow composting on a farm.
And I'll kind of echo the same, very much in the hundreds of thousands. And we currently work with Compost Now offsite, also windrow. The volume we work with right now is much too large, aside from a single educational location on campus. And that's just composting the garden waste. It's separate from our food system or our dining halls.
Yeah, similar to the other two universities, I don't have the specific numbers, but all the compost that we collect from other students, that all goes to an industrial composting facility, and any kitchen food scraps that we collect specifically for our educational compost bins, that is what we do within the garden. So that would be our own food scraps or garden scraps.
Awesome. Great question. And I know that digesters could be a whole nother webinar topic. So I'm sure a lot of people, in the audience may use some or have wondered about them. So definitely, a topic to do some research on and see what works best for your campus. I know, Lexi, you mentioned your urban area constraints and things like that. If our panelists wouldn't mind, if you guys have any resources that you think could help other schools in their journey to, becoming a closed loop campus or closing the loop on campus through composting, whether that be conferences or different groups, organizations in higher ed, any resource that you think may help. If you want to drop that in the chat, please feel free to. If you would like to share your email address, if people are interested in reaching out, you're also welcome to do that. But thank you so much for your time this afternoon and for everyone who joined in. And so happy to see just the impact that your campuses are making collectively and the impact that this next generation of students can have and the higher education, space as a whole can have. So hope everyone has a wonderful afternoon and hope to see a lot of you folks again on our next compost conversation in the winter. Thanks all for joining.